Elias Ward had never expected to be famous. He was just a human engineer, one of thousands assigned to observe the Galactic Concord's diplomatic events. The Concord was a vast alliance of civilizations, each species proud of their calm minds, precise movements, and perfect control over emotions. Humans, with their chaotic histories and loud habits, were considered minor curiosities, hardly worth serious attention. Yet, on the first night of the welcome ceremony, Elias found himself standing at the center of an alien ballroom, and the eyes of hundreds of beings were on him. He didn't intend to be noticed. He had tripped over a hovering display console and accidentally caused it to spin wildly, throwing holographic projections into a messy swirl. Some of the diplomats chuckled, others frowned. Elias's own cheeks burned, but he smiled and waved awkwardly. Then it happened. A woman stepped forward, taller than any human and radiant in her own alien way. Her skin shimmered like polished copper, and her eyes glowed faintly in patterns that seemed impossible to describe. Elias froze. He had no idea she was looking at him so intently. When she finally spoke, her voice was musical and strange, full of words that twisted in the air like smoke. Yet somehow, Elias understood her meaning without translation. "I have never seen anyone this... sexy," she said. The room went silent. Every diplomat, human and alien alike, paused. Some alien species tilted their heads, unsure how to react. The words were shocking, but even more shocking was the expression on her face. She was not angry. She was not mocking. She was excited, almost overwhelmed. Elias blinked. He stammered. Thanks, I guess?" The woman's lips curved into something close to a smile, and the hall buzzed with whispers. Humans looked at him, bewildered. Aliens looked at him, fascinated. For some species, Elias's sudden visibility caused microspikes in their neural sensors, a kind of involuntary reaction they could not control. Humans had always been unpredictable, but no one expected them to trigger this much attention just by being themselves. Sarin, the woman from the Varelian clans, had evolved on a planet where emotions were suppressed for survival. Her species prided itself on calm logic, emotional clarity, and disciplined behavior. Passion was dangerous. Excitement was dangerous. And yet, here was Elias, spilling laughter and chaos and warmth like sunlight into her perfectly regulated world. She could not look away. Elias, still blushing, tried to explain himself. I tripped on the console. I didn't mean to." Sarin waved a hand, her alien gestures precise but filled with energy that seemed almost alive.
"No, it is not the console. It is you."
"Your presence. You are alive. I have never seen this in anyone before." It was a strange compliment, but Elias felt it like a spark. He had always known humans were different. They joked too much, fought too much, loved too much. But he had never realized that simply existing could have such an impact. He laughed softly. "I guess being human is kinda loud." "Loud," Sarin repeated, trying the word. Her species had no concept of noise beyond function, but she understood what Elias meant. He was loud in ways that mattered, loud in ways that made her mind race, loud in ways that made her heart, or what she thought of as her heart, stumble. Diplomats around them began to murmur. Some species were curious, some were skeptical, and some were cautious, as though this small human could somehow disrupt centuries of order. The Varelians had never experienced someone like Elias before. They were used to predictability, to measured responses. Elias's laughter, his visible nerves, his open joy, it was intoxicating. Throughout the evening, Elias moved from group to group. He made small mistakes, mixed up names, mispronounced titles. Every error was human. Every error drew eyes toward him. Aliens who had only ever seen humans on holovids or reports were shocked by his confidence and awkwardness combined. He was chaotic, yes, but in a way that made people want to pay attention, to understand him. Sarine followed discreetly, observing every motion. She was not the only one. Other Varelians had joined her, studying this anomaly. They had seen humans before, of course, but none had ever generated this level of neurological reaction. It was as if the universe itself had designed a species that could reach them emotionally, where no logic or technology could. By the end of the night, Elias had unintentionally become the center of every conversation. Where humans were expected to be quiet observers, he had been vibrant, bold, and utterly human. He laughed freely, told stories about his childhood on Earth, and even recounted tales of surviving dangerous space missions with a mixture of pride and humility. Every story, every gesture, every smile made the Varelians feel something new, something dangerous, thrilling, and undeniable. When the ceremony ended, Elias stepped outside into the observation terrace. Exhausted but exhilarated, the stars stretched infinitely across the sky. Sarine approached, her movements careful but filled with unspoken curiosity. "You," she began, then paused. "You are unlike anything I have known." Elias shrugged, brushing the sweat from his forehead. "I'm just me. I don't mean to be anything else." "No," Seirin said firmly, her voice carrying across the terrace. "You are something else. You are alive. You are what humans call sexy. And I do not fully understand why it is so powerful." Elias laughed awkwardly. "Sexy? Yes," she replied. "Not what you think it means. Not just appearance. It is your courage, your laughter, your care, your stubbornness, your willingness to feel everything. I cannot contain my excitement." For a moment, Elias was speechless. Humans had never been celebrated for emotional presence, for raw vitality, in front of alien species. Yet here he was, praised in ways he could hardly believe. He felt a strange pride mixed with confusion. It was unsettling and thrilling. "I guess humans do have something," Elias said slowly. "Maybe it's just that we refuse to hide what we feel." Sarine nodded, her glowing eyes reflecting starlight. "Perhaps, and perhaps the galaxy will never be the same now that you are here." Unbeknownst to both of them, the Concord sensors had already logged the interaction. Analysts from several species were beginning to speculate that humans might be more than just unpredictable. They might be dangerous in the sense that they could alter civilizations simply by being themselves. The thought was unintentional. Elias had not sought attention. He had simply existed fully, and that, the galaxy would soon learn, was humanity's secret power. As the night deepened, the observation terrace was quiet, except for the soft hum of distant ships. Elias and Sarin lingered, separated by species but united by curiosity. She studied him in awe, and he studied her in bewilderment. Neither fully understood what was happening, but both sensed that this encounter had changed something important. Elias thought about Earth, his family, his friends, the struggles humanity had faced. All the chaos, all the noise, all the mistakes. They had created him. They had made humans unpredictable, passionate, and uncontainable. For the first time, he realized that being human was not a flaw in the universe. It was a gift. And as the first light of alien dawn touched the horizon, Sarin whispered something that only she could hear. "I have never seen anyone like you, and I cannot wait to understand more." Elias smiled faintly, unaware that the galaxy was already beginning to notice him. The first threads of a story were being woven, one that would stretch across stars, challenge centuries of order, and show the universe that humanity was not to be underestimated. The world of diplomacy, the calm precision of alien civilizations, and the meticulously controlled concord would never be the same again. And it all started with one human, one laugh, and one moment of simple, uncontainable humanity. Elias took a deep breath, ready for whatever came next. He did not know it yet, but the adventure had just begun. Elias did not sleep much that night. Even in his quarters, the memory of Sauron's words burned in his mind. Sexy, not in appearance, but in being alive. It sounded strange, almost like a compliment from another world. And in a way, it was. Humans rarely received such recognition from other species. To be acknowledged for simply feeling, existing, and acting with passion, it was intoxicating. By morning, the Concord was abuzz. Diplomatic reports noted the Ward effect. Analysts from multiple species tried to make sense of it. Humans were supposed to be observers, quiet and cautious. Instead, Elias had sparked curiosity, fascination, and even neurological excitement among species that prided themselves on emotional control. Some species called it dangerous, others called it miraculous. In the observation hall, Elias found himself surrounded by alien scientists. One was Tharok, a tall, crystalline being with segmented limbs that refracted light like prisms. Tharok's species communicated with vibrations and patterns of luminescence. He was fascinated by Elias's presence, studying how his laughter, gestures, and emotions seemed to ripple through nearby observers. "Affect them," Tharok said, clicking his limbs in confusion. "Your presence. It disrupts neural equilibrium." Elias shrugged, nervously adjusting the sleeve of his jumpsuit. "I guess I just act like a human. I laugh, I talk, I exist. I don't mean to disrupt anyone." Barok's luminescent panels flickered faster. "Disrupt?"
No. Awaken. Your species awakens something they do not know exists. Their minds react with excitement.
"It is extraordinary."
Elias frowned. "Awaken? That sounds dangerous."
"It is not dangerous," Tharok corrected, though uncertainty lingered in his vibrations. "It is irresistible." Meanwhile, reports poured in from the Varelian delegation. Sarin and her people had begun informal studies of Elias, noting how each human gesture, laugh, or expression triggered intense emotional and cognitive reactions. The Varelians had long suppressed passion, art, and emotion to maintain social stability. They valued logic, patience, and control. Humans broke every rule without trying. Elias, blissfully unaware, wandered the Concord corridors with a cup of synthetic coffee. Everywhere he went, conversations paused. Varelians looked at him, their neural receptors overwhelmed by a new, chaotic energy. Some tried to hide it, adjusting their postures or lowering their heads. Others simply stared, unable to turn away. Sarin approached him again. She moved with her usual grace, though her amber eyes glimmered with something closer to excitement than calm. "Elias," she said, her voice careful, "your people, they are remarkable." Elias laughed nervously. "Thanks, I think. But we're messy. We make mistakes. We argue. We yell. Sometimes pay. We feel too much, maybe." "You feel everything," Saurin said, almost reverently. "And you act anyway."
That is what fascinates us. That is what terrifies us.
"You are alive in a way that I did not know existed." Elias sipped his coffee, thinking, "I never realized just being human could affect people. I thought humans were weak. Other species are stronger, smarter, more controlled.
I didn't think we had anything that special.
Sarin shook her head. Strength? Control? These are tools, but life, your life, it is uncontainable.
That is a power no one else has. Over the next several days, Elias found himself at the center of growing attention.
Meetings meant for human observers became arenas of fascination. Every species that encountered him recorded micro-responses, trying to measure the inexplicable effects he had. Even the most stoic aliens were drawn to his humor, curiosity, and openness. During a briefing in the central hall, Elias was asked to demonstrate a simple human survival technique, a problem-solving drill designed for astronauts. He stood on a platform, facing holographic projections of collapsing structures and emergency scenarios.
Other species expected careful, calculated steps.
Instead, Elias improvised, shouted instructions, and adapted to each sudden failure with a combination of instinct and stubbornness. Where logic failed, humanity thrived. He twisted, grabbed, and rerouted systems with reckless confidence. Aliens whispered to each other, their voices tinged with shock. How can one human act like this? How can one being be so unpredictable, yet so effective? Sarin watched from the side, eyes wide. She realized something profound. Humans were not just emotionally intense. They were capable of overcoming odds in ways the galaxy had never seen. Chaos, emotion, and courage were not weaknesses. They were tools, and humans wielded them naturally. After the exercise, Elias collapsed in a chair, exhausted. I didn't know it would be so tiring, he admitted. Sarin leaned closer.
You did not tire because of your body. You did not tire because of the tasks.
You tired because you care. You tire because every choice matters to you. That fascinates us. The us she referred to was not just the Varelians. Observers from multiple species had begun to watch. They recorded data, discussed anomalies, and debated the implications. Humans were dangerous, not in violence, but in presence. A single human could awaken feelings, ideas, and curiosity that had lain dormant for millennia. Elias began to understand, slowly, the weight of his existence, his laughter, his mistakes, his stubborn hope. They were not just quirks. They were signals. He had no intention of being special, no ambition to dominate. Yet, simply by being himself, he was changing perceptions, stirring emotions, and challenging centuries of alien conditioning. The tension became clear when a meeting of the Concord's High Council convened. Delegates from every major species gathered, some curious, some cautious, and a few openly fearful. The topic: humans. Reports from scientists like Tharok and observations from the Varelians were presented. Humans were not dangerous in a traditional sense. They did not wield massive fleets or superior weapons. Their advantage was presence. Emotional unpredictability, resilience, stubbornness, and passion made them difficult to control. One counselor, a tall being with a metallic carapace, spoke. If humans continue to spread their influence, it may destabilize entire systems. They are infectious. Not with disease, but with emotion. Their energy disrupts centuries of equilibrium. Another delegate from a liquid-based species countered. But is it not also an opportunity? They are capable, courageous, and adaptive. Could they not solve problems we have long failed to manage? Sarin stood among the Varelian observers, her hands clenched. She wanted to speak, to defend humans. She understood them in a way her people could not. Humans were messy, yes, but their messiness was genius, bravery, and life itself. The debate ended inconclusively. A formal resolution would be postponed, but whispers began to circulate. Humans were no longer minor curiosities. They were catalysts. Observers began referring to Elias's presence as the Ward effect, a term that would ripple through the galaxy in the coming months. Elias himself remained largely unaware of the political storm he had triggered. He continued to explore the Concord, meeting diplomats, engineers, and curious species. Everywhere he went, he laughed, shared stories, and acted human. Everywhere he went, eyes followed, neural sensors recorded, and the galaxy began to notice. One day, while walking through the observation gardens, a massive biodome filled with alien flora, Elias met Zarin again. She had stopped recording data for once, standing simply as herself. "You continue to affect everyone?" she said softly. "Your presence, your actions, your laughter, they are remarkable." Elias smiled. "I'm just me. I don't try to affect anyone. I just live." "That is the point," she said, stepping closer. "You do not hide. You do not control yourself to fit expectations. You act, you feel, and you continue despite fear or uncertainty. Humans are, but in a way that is beautiful." Elias looked up at the stars beyond the dome. "I never thought being human could be powerful. I thought we were weak." "You are not weak," Zarin replied. "Your strength is not in muscle or logic. It is in life, in feeling, in refusing to be tamed by fear or expectation. That terrifies some and excites others. That is humanity." For the first time, Elias began to see the truth. Humans had survived against impossible odds, not because of technology or weapons, but because they dared to care, to love, to hope, and to act despite uncertainty. That combination, simple as it seemed, had no equal in the galaxy. And as the Concord continued its debates, meetings, and discussions, the humans were quietly becoming a phenomenon. Aliens who once ignored them were now fascinated. Varelians, long considered the most controlled and logical of species, were enthralled. The galaxy was awakening to something new, something unpredictable, something alive. Elias did not ask for this. He had not sought recognition or influence. He had simply acted as a human acts, with honesty, with emotion, with courage. And now the galaxy was noticing. By the time the sun-like star outside the dome cast its first golden rays on the biogarden, Elias realized that his life and the lives of his people was about to change. The universe would never again consider humans ordinary. And for the first time, Elias felt both fear and excitement. The Concord was changing faster than anyone expected. Reports from analysts and scientists kept coming, each one more startling than the last. Humans, long considered minor curiosities, were now the subject of fascination, fear, and cautious admiration. Everywhere Elias went, he could feel eyes on him, some curious, some wary, and others outright in awe. It had begun subtly. A small group of Varelians approached him in the dining hall, nervously observing his gestures. He had no idea why they were tense. They tried to sit casually, but their rigid posture betrayed excitement. One leaned forward and whispered in his direction, speaking carefully in halting English. "Your energy... It is unusual. We cannot ignore it." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Energy? I'm just eating lunch." "I'm not doing anything special. You are alive," she said, her words trembling slightly. "You act as humans do. You feel as humans do. And that affects us." It was becoming clear to Elias that being human carried weight far beyond anything he had imagined. Simple emotions, small gestures, laughter, and courage were enough to spark fascination or panic across the galaxy. He had not wanted this attention, but now it followed him everywhere. Later that day, a formal warning arrived from the Concord's High Council. A message, cold and precise, requested that humans restrict their interactions with certain species. The reasoning was clear. The unpredictable presence of humans is causing disruptions in neural and emotional responses across multiple civilizations. Elias read the message aloud to his fellow human observers.
Neural and emotional disruptions. I'm not doing anything dangerous.
His colleague, Mara Singh, sighed.
Elias, it's not intentional.
But apparently, being human is powerful. You have no idea how much attention you've drawn. Elias frowned. I just talk to people. Laugh. Tell stories. That's it. How can that be a problem?
It's a problem because no one knows how to handle it, Mara replied. They're not used to unpredictability, passion, or emotional courage.
Humans are a catalyst. The word stuck with him. Catalyst. Humans had survived the chaos of Earth, of wars, of disasters. They had survived because they acted despite fear, despite uncertainty, and because they cared more than logic or safety allowed. And now the galaxy was beginning to notice. A few days later, Elias was summoned to a briefing with Saurin and a small council of Varelians. The room was quiet, sterile, and dimly lit, but their tension was palpable. They were there to observe, to study, but also to understand what they could not explain.
Elias Ward, Saurin began, her voice steady but intense. Your people are remarkable. Your presence has caused unexpected neurological reactions among my people.
We have recorded multiple incidents of excitement, fascination, and confusion. Elias blinked. I don't understand.
You mean people can't control themselves around me? It is not just control, Saurin replied. It is awakening.
Humans are capable of feeling, acting, and creating in ways that are beyond our comprehension. It is dangerous, but also essential.
Elias felt a mixture of pride and fear. Dangerous?
Essential? He had only wanted to do his job, to observe, to survive. Yet the very act of being human seemed to ripple across civilizations. Saurin leaned closer, her glowing eyes flickering. You do not realize it yet, but your people have power. Not in the weapons you carry or the ships you command, but in your courage, in your stubbornness, in your willingness to act despite fear. That is what terrifies some and excites others.
I just live my life.
That's it. I don't try to change anyone. That is precisely why it is so influential, Saurin said softly. You act without calculation. You do not suppress your emotions. You face danger, discomfort, and uncertainty with life itself. That is unprecedented. Later, Elias was assigned to a joint mission. A small, unstable star system had begun emitting dangerous radiation, threatening nearby colonies. The Concorde's fleets had attempted to stabilize it, but traditional methods had failed. They now needed humans, not as soldiers, but as problem solvers, improvisers, and adapters. Elias, Mara, and a team of engineers from multiple species boarded a specialized vessel. The situation was dire. Aliens relied on rigid protocols, simulations, and perfect calculations. Humans relied on improvisation, stubbornness, and intuition. The mission began with caution. Sensors flashed warnings, energy levels fluctuated, and alarms rang constantly. The alien engineers debated every step, debating probabilities and equations. Elias intervened, suggesting a simple adjustment, a reroute of energy channels to compensate for unexpected fluctuations. The aliens hesitated. Their calculations said it was too risky. Elias smiled, shrugging. It might work. Or it might not. But doing nothing is worse. The first reroute triggered a cascade of system adjustments. Alarms blared. Screens flashed. For a moment, chaos ruled the bridge. Then the ship stabilized. Energy levels normalized. The radiation threat decreased. The alien stared at Elias, stunned.
You risked everything,
One of them whispered, trembling. And it worked. Elias shrugged again. I didn't mean to. I just tried something. Sarin, observing via remote link, felt a surge of admiration. Humans did not calculate everything. They acted. They cared. They failed and tried again, and somehow, against odds and predictions, they succeeded. Throughout the mission, Elias and his human team improvised repeatedly. Aliens began to notice a pattern. When humans were present, failure became temporary. Humans acted, humans adapted, and humans inspired others to act as well. It was contagious, not in a literal sense, but in spirit. After the mission's success, a celebration was organized in honor of the participants. Aliens hesitated to acknowledge humans. Some were still wary, but curiosity and fascination won. They asked questions, sought stories, and tried to understand how humans could do what other species could not. Elias told stories of Earth, surviving storms, exploring oceans, inventing tools with limited resources, and surviving countless disasters through improvisation and cooperation. His laughter, passion, and honesty drew attention. Species who had never considered humans remarkable were now captivated. Sarin approached him again, a quiet intensity in her eyes. Your people, changing us. We cannot look away. And yet some fear you. They do not understand what they see. Elias nodded. I don't understand either, but I do know this. Humans survive. We find a way, even when the odds are impossible. That night, the High Council convened once more. The reports of the Ward effect could no longer be ignored. Humans were proving their value in emergencies, but their presence also destabilized social norms. Some species demanded restrictions. Others demanded that humans be studied further. The debate grew heated. Aliens who valued order and predictability feared humans. Aliens who valued creativity and courage admired them. Sarin stood in the corner, trying to mediate, understanding that humans were neither threat nor tool. They were something else entirely. A spark. Elias, unaware of the full political storm, returned to his quarters. He felt tired, exhilarated, and more alive than ever. He realized that being human was not a flaw. It was a gift. Chaos, emotion, stubborn hope, they were strengths the galaxy had yet to understand. And as he looked out at the stars, Elias knew that the coming days would be challenging. Humans would face suspicion, misunderstanding, and fear. But they would also inspire, adapt, and survive in ways no other species could. The universe was watching. And for the first time, Elias understood what it meant to truly carry the weight of humanity. Not through weapons or dominance, but through courage, heart, and presence. For all the galaxy's precision, order, and control, it was unprepared for humans, and that unpreparedness would be the key to survival, success, and influence. The conquered would never be the same. Humans had arrived, not as conquerors, but as catalysts, and Elias, laughing softly in his quarters, could not help but smile. He was just one human, but one human was enough to begin a revolution of life, passion, and uncontainable energy across the stars. Elias felt the weight of the galaxy pressing in on him. The Concord's debates, warnings, and fascination had grown into something more serious. Humans were no longer minor participants. They were a presence that the galaxy could not ignore. Some species admired them. Others feared them. And a few quietly plotted to contain them. The day began with an urgent message from the High Council. A nearby star system, heavily populated with colonies from multiple species, was on the verge of collapse. A series of solar flares threatened to wipe out entire worlds. Traditional technology and methods had already failed. The Council needed humans, and they needed Elias. Elias glanced at Mara and the human team.
"Looks like they finally want us for something important," he said.
Mara nodded. Important, yes, but dangerous, too. Everyone is watching. One mistake and humans will be blamed for destabilizing everything.
Elias frowned. "We don't usually do well under pressure?"
Mara smiled wryly. You mean humans don't usually survive chaos without it being messy? But that's exactly why you're needed. They boarded the fastest vessel available, a reinforced shuttle designed to navigate unstable star systems. The ride was tense. Aliens from other species who had been assigned to the mission tried to follow protocols meticulously, calculating every trajectory and predicting every flare. Elias and his human crew, by contrast, adapted constantly. They improvised solutions, rerouted energy systems, and reacted instinctively to each sudden hazard. The ship shuddered violently as they entered the system. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and screens displayed cascading errors. Elias took a deep breath and shouted instructions over the chaos. "Reroute power to the secondary shields. Now! And patch the energy conduits before the next flare!" The aliens hesitated, unsure if the human commands would work. But their hesitation ended when the first flare struck. Energy shields flared, systems overloaded, and for a terrifying moment, it seemed the ship would fail. Then, through a combination of human intuition, courage, and stubbornness, the adjustments held. The flares passed. Damage was minimal. The crew exhaled collectively. One alien engineer, trembling, whispered, They did it. Humans adapted when everything else failed." Elias wiped sweat from his brow. "I'm just doing what humans always do. Survive. Figure it out."
"Keep moving." As they stabilized the system, reports from orbiting colonies showed something extraordinary.
Other species began to mimic human improvisation. Inspired by the human crew's courage and flexibility, alien engineers tried new approaches, reprogrammed emergency systems, and even laughed in the midst of chaos. For the first time in recorded history, emotion and intuition guided large-scale problem-solving across multiple civilizations simultaneously.
"Sarin watched from a Concord command station."
Her eyes glowed softly with admiration. She had warned her people, had tried to explain that humans were catalysts, not weapons. Now the proof was undeniable. Humans inspired action, courage, and hope where calculations and rigid protocols had failed. After stabilizing the system, the crew returned to the Concord. The High Council convened immediately to review the mission. Humans were now at the center of political attention. Some counselors, once fearful, began to see the value of emotional courage as a strategic advantage. Others argued that humans were too unpredictable, too dangerous to be trusted. Elias stepped forward during the debate. His voice was calm but firm. We did not intend to cause fear. But we did not seek recognition. We acted because people's lives were at stake. Humans survive because we refuse to do nothing. We fail, we adapt, and we keep moving. That is all. Aliens who had previously labeled humans as disruptive now considered the logic in his words. Action, courage, and resilience. These were qualities that no calculation, no protocol, no flawless logic could replace. Sarine stood beside him, her voice steady. Your presence is not a threat. It is a gift. Humans inspire hope, creativity, and determination. That is power no species can fully predict or contain. Debates raged late into the day. Votes were cast. Double. The High Council, after hours of discussion, finally reached a historic decision. Humans would not be restricted, studied, or controlled. Instead, they would be recognized as cultural catalysts advisors in crisis response, and examples of living courage. They were not leaders nor rulers, but they were acknowledged as essential to the galaxy's future. Elias felt a strange mix of pride and disbelief. He had only acted as humans always did. He had laughed, improvised, and cared, and that simple existence, the way humans faced life with passion and stubbornness, had changed the galaxy. That evening, Elias returned to the observation terrace. Sarin met him there. The twin suns of a distant system painted the sky in gold and violet. "You have changed the galaxy," she said softly, "not through war, not through dominance, but by being human, by being alive. I didn't change anything, I just lived. We humans always do." "No," Sarin said, shaking her head. "You changed everything. You made us see that life is not only about logic, control, or precision. It is about courage, passion, and connection. That is what humans bring. That is what sexy means in our language. The courage to live fully, despite fear." Elias smiled faintly. He thought of Earth, of the chaos, the storms, the challenges humans had survived. Their imperfections, mistakes, and stubborn hope had forged them into something unexpected, something the galaxy could not ignore. "You really think humans can keep making a difference?" he asked. Sarin's eyes glimmered.
Yes.
"Because you feel, you act, you inspire, you survive. That is a kind of power no one else has, and no one can take it from you." The stars stretched across the horizon, infinite and radiant. Elias felt a deep connection to every human who had lived, struggled, and persisted. Every human had carried this spark, this energy that now resonated across the galaxy. And for the first time, he realized something profound. Humans did not need to conquer or dominate. Their very existence, their courage and passion, could shape the universe. In the following weeks, humans began to assist in other missions. They were called upon for emergencies, for creative problem-solving, and for mediation between species in conflict. Everywhere they went, Elias and his team left a trail of awe, inspiration, and subtle change. The ward effect became a common term in the Concord, referring not to a single human, but to the unpredictable, unstoppable energy of the entire species. Some species resisted, fearing the chaos humans could bring, but even they could not deny results. When humans acted, lives were saved, problems were solved, and communities thrived. Aliens who had once dismissed humans as weak now whispered among themselves, "These creatures, messy and loud, were indispensable." Through it all, Elias remained humble. He laughed, made mistakes, told stories, and acted with the same humanity that had always defined him. He did not crave recognition, political power, or glory. He only acted because humans could not do otherwise. They lived fully, felt deeply, and acted bravely. One night back on the observation terrace, Sarin spoke again. "The galaxy may never fully understand humans," she said, "but that is the point. You are a force that cannot be measured, predicted, or contained. And that is beautiful." Elias gazed at the stars.
"Maybe that's what humans are meant to do," he said. "Not lead, not rule. Just be alive. Show the universe what it means to care, to act, and to survive." Sarin smiled. "And in doing so, you change everything. One human, one act, one choice at a time." Elias nodded. He thought of the first night, of Sarin's words, and of the path that had led him here. Being human had always been messy, uncertain, and dangerous, yet that messiness, that courage, and that energy were exactly what the galaxy needed. The Concord would continue to debate, to calculate, and to plan. Some species would always fear humans.
Some would always admire them, but one thing was certain. Humanity had arrived, and simply by existing, humans had shown the universe that strength was not always in weapons, control, or perfection. It was in life itself. Elias smiled quietly. He did not need a title, a command, or recognition. He was human, and that was enough. And as the stars stretched infinitely above, he felt something the galaxy had never seen before, the full, uncontainable, courageous presence of a species that refused to be anything but alive. Humans would not dominate, they would not rule, but they would change everything. One laugh, one act, one choice at a time. And that, the universe realized, was more powerful than anyone had ever imagined.